that will give you some idea of the Medina, of the quay at its busiest, as you can see. Heyday of the quay itself was from 1850 to 1950, and it was an extremely busy port. I would suggest that at its heyday it was employing at least 300 people on or from the quay, and that is a tremendous amount. Those people, of course, started work at 6 o'clock in the morning, and they started by having a pint of beer in the fountain, which was over on that corner there. On the other corner, still there today, is the Dolphin. So they always have a drink before they started work at 6 o'clock. In this picture here, you can see several men stood there. They were casual labourers, and they would wait there, and if one of the employers wanted extra men, he'd go up and gather one of those men to assist. Here's a picture of the quay when the railway bridge was across the actual was replaced today by the road bridge. In my youth, and that's in the 1920s, I could come down to the quay and I could question the lorry drivers, Craters lorry drivers, ask them where they were going, and I could always get a ride on a Saturday morning and go to one of the towns in the island of my choice. And that was more or less my apprenticeship, because when I left school at 14, I immediately started here on the quay, working on the lorries, and together with all the rest of the men. It was a wonderful community. It was so close knit. You can't imagine how just close that community was. Most of them were related, and we started here on the quay here at 7:30, and a 70-80 hour week was nothing unusual summertime. When we look around here at this is little change. This is the hub of the quay. When you think of the quay itself, that was extended the entire length of C Street. There were warehouses in both directions, almost to the end of that street, and at the end of both ends there was an open coal yard. And funnily enough, coal was a tremendous part of the business here, but it was terminated as soon as the railway came. There was a railway between Cowes and Newport from 1862, and of course they had a siding up at Newport there, and the trucks, and when the colliers came into Meadham at Cowes and transferred it to these small vessels that brought it to Newport Quay, it was instead transferred into trucks and came up to Newport railway station. So that particular aspect of the work was lost. Perhaps they weren't too sad about that. It was a dusty, terrible job. And you can't imagine how much coal was used. There was a gasworks just the other side of the bridge there, and that would have taken a tremendous amount of coal. But when it came up by barge up to Newport Quay, of course, it was barreled across into the gasworks. But once the railway came, the trains came along the bridge, over the gasworks, and there was a chute down there, and the coal was tipped out of the trucks down the chute straight into the yard. So that was a piece of the trade that was lost. But mind you, the trade was increasing so dramatically that it was a colossal undertaking. One of the largest problems was the moving flour. You can't imagine how much flour people used in those days. On a Friday, there was a regular run every Friday to 4 villages. That was Whitwell, Knighton, Chell and Chell Green. And we used to take 2.5 tons of flour to those 4 villages. And the flour was in 140-pound bags, so 16 bags made a ton. And I'll tell you how they were distributed. in Whitwell High Street was W.J. Dyer, a baker, and he would have half a ton of flour every week. Just around the corner in Kemming Road was his brother, G.H. Dyer. He would have 500 weight of flour every week. So that's 1,500 weight gone already. And then on to Knighton, and Hibbard was the baker there, and they would have a ton of flour, 16 bags every week. Of course, they had quite a big round. That's how that was used. And then on to Chelm, Brown Brothers at Chell, and they would have 8 bags, that was a half a ton, and they had a round, and all 8 round Hatherfield, etc. And they were often still delivering flour at bread at 9 o'clock in the evening. And there's tales from Chell and Hatherfield of the distribution of that bread. One of the Browns would go to a house, of course he was well known, and with the bread, and this would perhaps be 8 o'clock, 8:30 in the evening, and they'd say, "We'd like a cup of tea, Mr. Brown." "Oh yes, please," he said, and he'd sit in the chair and go to sleep for an hour, and then carry on with the round. And apart from that, the hours that they worked, you had to remember that if it was hot, the dough was made overnight, put into these huge bins, then they had to get up about 2 o'clock in the morning to knock it back, otherwise it would come out, push the lid up and come out onto the floor. And then on to Chell Green, and that was a Mr. George Cotton, and he would have 500 weight of flour a week. So that was 2.5 tons to run just that little tiny district. So you can imagine how much. There were 2 flour stores. One was in C Street that contained the Spitter's flour, and the other was down here, the Jubilee stores, which contained Ranks. And to continue this story, I think we should have to move. Every day you had quite a lot of bread. And when you think of the tonnage, when we get down to Jubilee store, down to Jubilee, I'll tell you more about bread. There were 40 milkmen in Newport in 1942. But don't forget, milk, if it was a hot day, they'd have to come round twice a day because it wouldn't keep overnight, it would go sour. Of course, all these milkmen weren't farmers, weren't dairy farmers. They would have milk delivered, and they would be merely retailers. And to think that there were 40 just delivering in Newport. Where the riverside is now, that was the gasworks. Gas was introduced into Newport in 1820, but the gasworks at that time was at Pan Bridge. And by 1850 it had grown, the business was so large that they moved it down and on the site that is now the Riverside Centre. And they built what they called a gas retort. It was a skyscraper of a building as far as Newport was concerned, but it was only there for 12 years, in 1937 to 1949. And then the gasworks was built at East Quays, which supplied the whole island, and all these local gasworks became redundant. And that was cleared away, and you see what we got today. I was at Thetis Wharf in Medina Road of Cowes in 1940, when the Admiralty sent through a message that they were taking over 6 of the vessels, and the 6 vessels, they're all named there, and they were told, the crew, they could leave the vessels if they wished to do so, and they put a naval crew on board, but if they volunteered, and it was going to be a dangerous commission, they would be delighted because of their skill in handling this type of vessels. And there are all the names. The larger vessels you will find had a crew of 4. The smaller ones had a crew of 3. But if you look here, the funny thing is, when you look at the chamois, there's only 2. Of all those men, when they were told they were free to leave the vessels, only one opted to leave. And no one blamed him because he suffered badly with his nerves. And every one of those went. And Mark Hocking He's here somewhere. Oh, he was named jayhawking. He was 17 years of age, and he went to Dunkirk. What they were small and flat-bottom boats, and they could go up on the beach, and they picked up as many as they could get on board, take them out to the larger ships, and then go back again. And eventually, when the evacuation was more or less over, they loaded themselves with soldiers and brought them back to Dover. It was the stables for the borough of Newport, but we're coming to their grounds in just a minute. And a subject I know little about is early motoring. What fuel did they use? If you go back to say 1900 with not more than a dozen cars on the island, what fuel did they use? But it was increasing, and of course during the First World War vehicles were increasing dramatically, and it was in 1920 that British Petroleum came and they built a depot here and had a pipe out to the quay wall, and they were only there for a short while. Trade was increasing so dramatic it was unsuitable. They moved over to Little London, and we shall see that as we go round there. One of these ancient vehicle rallies, and you will often see a 2-gallon can on the running board on the side of the vehicle, and it was sold in various places. There was no garages as we know them today, and you could go to an ironmonger's and even to a chemist and buy 2-gallon cans of petrol. It was incredible, wasn't it? Depot. And of course they employed quite a lot. When you think about the undertaking of a borough, that they'd done everything, collected the refuse, repaired the roads and everything else. They had quite a big depot here. The carpenters, all sorts, used to work from this place here. And now from here we're looking at a concrete apron where it comes out there and goes right down to Jubilee Store. On there stood what was known as the Green Store, and it was all the general goods came in from off the river into the store, sorted into different districts, and then the lorries would load at this side and go away. At this end, that one part of the store was devoted to sugar. That was Tate & Lyle's sugar would come up and discharge perhaps 100 tons of sugar in, and it'd be stored there and then distributed right around the island. At the other end was the huge great rolls of paper for the Katy Press. And the Katy Press was printed on a Friday, and on the Thursday, if it was an 8-page paper, and this was wasn't a tabloid, it was a big sheet, they would have 3 rolls of that paper. If it was a 12-page paper, they would have 4 rolls. They were huge. It was about 800 weight each, these rolls. Anna Shepherd lived at St. Cross Pier Cottage, and I think we can still read most of it, can't we? She had 12 children. She died in 1878, and she had 12 children, 77 grandchildren, and 74 great-grandchildren. So, and her when she died, that ended the connection with the shepherds virtually on the quay itself. The shepherd story goes back to the 14th century. In 1340 there was a family of shepherds living in Paul Street in Newport, and then in 1375 there was a family of shepherds living in the High Street. That is a very important date. It was only 2 days before the French sacked the town, destroyed the town virtually. And what happened to the people, we can only guess that they went to Carisbrooke Castle for refuge. 1891, the abbot and brothers of St. Cross Priory housed a family of shepherds at St. Cross Pier. Why would they choose the shepherds to do that? Simply because if you look at the documents relating to the shepherds, they were fishermen. So they had boats, and the St. Cross Priory owned a lot of land right along the west bank of the Medina, including Ware Farm, and they were more or less a cell of God's house at Southampton. They used to grow vegetables and everything else, and shepherds used to take the brothers and all the produce over to God's house Southampton and bring back whatever had to come. And if you read the Southampton port documents, you will see the number of times that shepherds was in and out of that port. It's incredible. And that association from the 14th century right up until Hannah Shepherd died, that's almost 6 centuries that shepherds was on the Medina. She's my great-great-grandmother. Must have been a good specimen of coloured beech, and on a normal beech root they grafted that. That's how you can retain a beautiful colour. The ministry, the then equivalent to the Ministry of Health, came down and closed quite a number of our churchyards, and so that meant you had to create cemeteries. But cemeteries are divorced from the church, because prior to that almost everyone was buried in the shadow of the church, weren't they? So what they'd done, they created these places as arboretums, cemeteries, and to say, well, look, it's beautiful, do come here. You know. That was about 1850 when they came here. They closed Church Lytton, they closed Carisbrooke churchyard, and of course that created the cemetery up on Mount Joy. And at Cowes, I think that was 1854, they closed the churchyards around the churches there and made Northwood Cemetery. It'd been used for so many years that they were overfilled with bodies, yes. Jubilee Stores, it was built in 1922. It was built by Thomas Gator and Bradfields, who at that time also owned Pan Mill. But in building it and various other activities, they got very much into debt. And one of the people they owed a tremendous amount of money to was Craters, who was doing their shipping for them. And so Craters took this in exchange for the debt. And the Jubilee Store, why it's called Jubilee, although it was built in 1922, Craters took it over in 1935, and that was 25 years, the Silver Jubilee of King George V. That's why it was called Jubilee Stores. Health and safety at work. Now just imagine, there's a vessel lying there loaded with flour. There was the hoist right up there, and the bags came down, and the bags came up on this hoist, and they come to the top floor. A 140-pound bag, you were stood in that doorway like that, holding on, and you reached out, grabbed the bag, out, you released the hoist, reach out, grab the other corner of the bag, swing it in, and inside there was like a stool, landed on there, and then someone would carry it away. The ideal was there was 3 men in a team, and you pulled your own bag up. but the older men couldn't stand in that door, and with that distance, what, 40 feet down to the vessel, they couldn't do it. So a young person like me would have to pull up all the bags, and you get so expert you could pull up 55 or 60 in an hour, a minute a bag. That was pretty good going, single bags coming up. But there is an illustration in the Musquats, you'll see how it works. Health and safety at work. They wouldn't believe it today. Standing in that doorway up there, pulling the cord, you stood, reached out, grabbed the bag and the other one, swung it in. 140-pound bags. I don't remember ever an accident there. You wouldn't fall in, you'd kill yourself. Very few people know what that building, that object on there is. It's a Lucam, L-U-C-A-M. And its object was, with people like Thomas Gator and Bradfield, it would be a lot of cereals. Wheat was in 2.5 hundredweight bags. And if it was brought up in the front of the building, there was no way you could release the hoist and pull that 2.5 hundredweight. These were built on, and the hoist come down through the floor, and the floor was hinged. And as the bag came up, the hinged sections would rise, the bag would go through, hinged sections would drop back down, drop the bag on there, and you could truck it away. That was the object of a Lucam. We talk about a hill on the island, we often talk about a chute, and we spell it S-H-U-T-E. But if it was in a mill or a building like this, and the flour and the bags was coming down from one floor to the next, it come down a chute, but it was spelt C-H-U-T-E. What was that? Just one of those little idiosyncrasies of the English language.
Yeah, this is where people like to swim, isn't it? Even now there's people swimming off of there.
Building there belonged to H.W. Morey's, the timber merchants, and the sides were slatted so that the timber was stored in there, the wind could blow through it and season the wood, dry them out. And there were others up the quay there belonged to Alexander Sharp. Stream came down through, right from up Staplers, and it was all known as the Ferry Hole, and that's where the name Fairlea comes from, and that was where it joined the Medina. It still runs today. Did you know that the bus stops that you see today all along the roads are all named? Every one of them. And there's some very interesting names. There's one on the military road called Middle of Nowhere. There were 3 of these hand cranes on the quay. The one right at the furthest end of the quay would raise 4 tons. The one in the middle would raise 8 tons. This one would raise 12 tons. Now, why that varied was because further you got downriver, more water you had. So if a vessel come up heavily laden, and he would come in under here, and they would pick up the containers or whatever. But if there was a container on there, and it weighed as much as 6 tons, that was never carried down in the hold. It was carried as deck cargo. They'd load the boat perhaps with flour or something and put this container on the top. When it came here, it was a hand winch, and it would take 8 men. If it was on the bottom in the bottom of the ship, it would take 8 men 25 minutes to raise that high enough to swing it round and put it onto a lorry. If it was carried as deck cargo, 2 minutes, just raise it a few feet, swing it round, and save so much time. They were experts at that sort of thing in those days. That building over there was a drawing store, and that again belonged to Thomas Gator and Bradfield's. The big store down there was the Vector Shipping, and the reason they escaped the nationalisation is because they were a shipping company, not a road vehicle company, and they escaped the nationalisation of transport in 1949. It was Royal Guy, Uriah Guy. He lived in C Street. He was retired. He was a man, I should think, at that time in his 70s, and he was supposedly dispensing the forerunner of Viagra's. And he was very well known, and of course we lads, we were interested in this, and we were always told that if we spoke to Royal Guy, we were to address him as Doctor. And we got together one day, 4 or 5 of us lads, and went to him to pester him for some of these the tablets. And he said, he said, I wouldn't dare do that. He said, the damage you were doing in Newport, you wouldn't believe it. He said, they know it come from me. And anyway, we kept on, all right, he said. So he put his hand in his pocket, pulled out this little flat tin, opened it up. Oh dear, he said, I've only got 1 tablet left. Picked it up, put it in his mouth and said, I should need that tonight. He was quite a character. That's comparatively modern. It's not more than 20 years old. Standing on that site, and you will see pictures of it, was Shepherd's Model Store. And I'll talk about it as we go down there. Standing here with the second bar cranes, it would pick up about 6 to 8 tons. But the story I want to tell you is this, that Shepherd's boat was over under the crane, picking up something, and of course Frank Shepherd was over in the store there, and I suppose he thought they were being a bit long about doing this, so he called across the water to the skipper of the ship, one Bill Gow, a more crustier fellow you couldn't imagine, and it started a terrible row that everybody enjoyed, of course, and it ended by Bill Gow shouting across to Frank Shepherd, the boss, when you're up there, pointing to the cemetery, he said, I'm coming up there every night. I'd be polite and say, and urinate on your grave. Frank Shepherd says, if you go first, I'll be up there every night. That's the kind of thing that went on. That was the third one was up there. That would lift some 6 to 8 tons. The other one up the end of it. It's water shallower. I expect people wonder why Quay Street is funnel shaped. It's very narrow where it leaves the High Street, and down here it's quite wide. Well, certainly in the 14th century, small vessels would come up here with merchandise. It was carried up into Quay Street and it was sold. So there was a market at the bottom of Quay Street, which makes it, when they built it, wider. The court building premises there was Crater's Garage, and they garaged 16 lorries in there. Aldridge, he worked for Crater's, and it was in 1940, the war was on, and we had to provide fire watches, and that was a crew of 4 here on the warehouses in C Street and 4 at Jubilee Store. Edgar Aldridge, of course, was with us here in 1940, and those flower stores were incredibly dusty. So one small corner was shut off with Hessian sacking, and it was against one of the doors that you could open out onto the water. And it was a really hot July or August night, and so we opened the doors. And there's a bar that locked the doors that going across. For some reason I've never understood, we took the bar out as well. Made no difference to the temperature. And Edgar was over in the Dolphin. And it was well after 10. We could hear him coming back, singing away, feeling his way through the stores. He lifted the Hessian sacking, came in, and made his way round there, singing away. 2 steps forward, 1 back, you know, round this Hessian sacking, got round the back over the river, led back, and it looked as though we went down the plug hole. And when we recovered, we lifted the Hessian sacking. He was standing in the river with water almost up to his armpits, cursing, quite sober. And that was one of Shepherd's stores. And in 1900, the first commercial cargo of bananas was unloaded into that store. It was so unusual, a lot of people had not seen a banana, let alone a bunch of bananas, perhaps 2 feet, 2'6", 3 foot high, with anything up to 24, 30 bunches of the hands of bananas on it. And Wapshot, who was a greengrocer, fruiter in St James's Street, came down and purchased one of these entire bunches. He put it in his window in St James's Street and crowds round her looking at this bunch of bananas. We'd have found that it was merely a footpath, and there was a bridge, a footbridge went over the Newport. Otherwise there was no obstruction over the Newport at all. On that corner there in 1800 was a brewery, a man by the name of Cook. And in 1806 the vat, the beer vat, which was huge, it was being cleaned out, and the two men descended in a ladder and they were overcome by fumes. Yet that vat hadn't been used for months, and I don't understand what the poison was, what was so dangerous. What they done, another fellow went down, they put a rope round him, he went down, he collapsed, they pulled him back, he survived, the two then there didn't. It was built over the Newport at that time. It was an open canal, apart from this one bridge over the Just look at the roof of what we call the rope store. It's an incredible roof. There's no other roof like it in the Isle of Wight. Have you looked at the shape of it? This end of the building is 13.5 feet. The other end is 33 feet. That's why you've got that strange shape of the roof. It's incredible. And I'll tell you how that came about. Robert Croucher in 1881, he purchased this piece of land. But it was originally, this was the open quay of Shepherd Brothers, right through there. But the railway wanted it to build their railway bridge over the Medina. And in so doing, they built their bridge, and this piece of land, after it was built, was spare. So Shepherds weren't interested, they'd already moved down below the bridge, and Croucher bought it and built over the maximum area he could decide. Now there's a tremendous story to this building here. Amongst the pictures you'll find that there was a little row of cottages along there originally, and then when Shepherds sold that site there to the railway company, Shepherds wasn't going to be inconvenienced. They moved below what would be the bridge, and they built there what was known as Derrick Store. But Derrick Store, why didn't they build it on the edge of the quay? Because it was a footpath, and they had to build it back. So they put the mast in there with the derrick, that's the swinging arm, and they'd come out over the boat pick up whatever was there, sacks or anything, take it round to the doors up there and drop it down on the floor. That's why that building was built back, and that was known as Derrick Store. Still the Derrick is there today. That was when Shepherd's built the model store, and it was a model store because it contained every lifting device known at that time, and that's why it was known as model store. But now, if we start just here, what we're looking at is St. Cross Pier. When you think of a pier, you think of at the seaside with the pier running out, but it wasn't. It was a strip of land between the footpath. You notice the footpath coming inside, coming inland, and to leave St. Cross Pier, this strip of land right the way down to Broken Bridge. And on that site there they built the model store. That's Shepherd's on there, see S for Shepherd's. Electric light didn't come to the island until 1900. Newport wasn't the first one to have electric light was Ventnor, and their electricity station was right alongside the town railway station. This again, the coal never came into the river because it didn't come until 1900. The railway was running between Newport and Cowes, and it would come in by truck on the rail and supply them with the coal they needed. Cowes never had their own electricity station, and it was supplied from Newport. And a relic of that is if you walk the old rail track between Newport and Cowes, now a cycle track, alongside you'll find there's concrete posts about 2 feet, 2'6" high with a concave top. The cable went along the top of that one, and those posts are there almost complete from one end of the river to the other. This was the depot of the British Petroleum, and they moved over here from the other side, and that was their office there, that brick building.
One that says
the Newport Motor Marine. They'd done all the repairs of the engines on the vessels, and it was amazing how self-supporting the quay was. And just alongside of it, we should come to the shipyard, Odessa shipyard, and these vessels were pulled up there, serviced and put back in the water. A huge building called the Ark, and it was built on the base of a lighter, and there's some good pictures of it, and then you will see the lighter beneath this structure. Throughout my lifetime, the Mew family lived there. Vera Mew was born there. She would be my age, and she born and died there. She married a chap by the name of Smith who was working in there, and they lived there all their life. Lovely little cottage. The Odessa boatyard, where they used to pull these river boats up and service them and put them back in the water. That's where Anna Shepherd lived all her married life and died there. On this concrete apron was a terrace of houses known as black houses, but you will see in one of the photographs there of it as brick before it was pitched. They pitched the walls to make it waterproof, and it was known as black houses. One of Anna Shepherd's sons lived in there, and he opened one of them as a bar, and in some publications you'll see Black House pub, or in the others you'll see Black Horse. I think that's a corruption. That was all up. Anna Shepherd had a piece of grain over there, like a garden. Used to keep chickens and all that. How'd that go? Those belonged to Shepherds, and they were occupied by two families of knights. The one on the left was my father's sister. My father's sister married one of the knights and lived there. In this side, that's another night, Percy night. I went to school with him. He's my age. He was born in there. He still lives there. Yeah. Before Ada Knight moved into the left-hand one, she lived in one of the warehouses along C Street, a place called Sunlight Cottage, and it was on the first floor of this warehouse, and it was called Sunlight Cottage because they stocked all the soap that belonged to the Sunlight Company in that store. And they lived there with all the mice and the rats. But nearly everybody on the quay was related, weren't they,
That's
Percy?
right,
Yeah.
yeah.
Is it intermarriage?
My father was the skipper of the Wave,
Yeah.
and Uncle Charlie next door was the skipper of the SBR6.
The SBL6, that's right. Yeah. They have a sailing boat in your time, Shepherds?
Yeah.
What, the Arrow?
The Arrow and the IO.
Oh no, they had the two sailing boats still.
And two steamboats.
Oh yeah, the Spray and the
Foam
Foam.
and the
Yeah. They were built at J.S. White's in
Yeah.
1897. And that was the first time Shepherds could guarantee a daily delivery. Because they were under steam and not sun. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's some history to it all.
Yeah.
And of course you knew Frank Shepherd very well.
Yeah, he lived just up the top of the road.
Seymour
didn't he?
House.
The house where the
Yeah,
car
they
parked.
pulled the house down, yeah. And empty all the dregs out of the empty beer bottles. Get them go on, got full drinking, didn't they? Oh dear, there were some characters, weren't there? Yeah. Anyway, thanks for seeing us.
That's all right.
It's very kind of you.
Any
Nice to
time
see you
you
too.
like.
It's nice to see you. Yeah. I see your brother quite frequently. He still comes in town.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wait, thanks very much indeed, Percy. That's
That's
very
all right,
kind
no.
of you. Yeah.
Nice to see you.
Yeah,
Cheerio,
and you.
mate.
Yeah. Oh, we should meet again. You will see us on this film.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Cheerio, Bill. Cheerio. Bye-bye.